Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Flight 482 from New York to Los Angeles seemed like an ordinary flight. Passengers were settling in, taking out their headphones, and trying to relax after a long day. Among them was Marcus Johnson, a black man in his 40s, calmly adjusting his seat and preparing his documents for an important meeting. His neat appearance and composed demeanor suggested a man accustomed to handling pressure with dignity. A few rows away, Lisa Cartwright, a flight attendant for over 10 years, wore a forced smile that betrayed her nervousness. She moved from seat to seat, checking seatbelts and luggage. But something was wrong. When she reached Marcus, a cold stare flashed across her face. Without warning or a word, she raised her hand and slapped him hard. The shock was immediate. Marcus froze, his hand on his cheek, while the passengers around him held their breath. Some pulled out their phones, others murmured in shock. The plane, confined and silent, suddenly seemed to have become a field of tension. Marcus didn't react with anger. He remained calm, measuring each breath, aware that this moment could change his life. But what followed surpassed anything anyone could have predicted. The video of the incident went viral within minutes, triggering a torrent of reactions across the United States. Civil rights organizations, journalists, and ordinary citizens began demanding justice, transforming Marcus, against his will, into a symbol of dignity in the face of racism. Lisa, for her part, was immediately removed from duty. But behind that slap lay a deeper secret. Her behavior wasn't simply a fit of anger. And Marcus, while weathering this media storm, would soon discover that this act had triggered a chain of events that would shatter his life, and the lives of all the passengers on board. The flight had started like an ordinary journey, but it would become the scene of a scandal that would shock an entire country. Marcus Johnson sat in his seat, 14B, calmly adjusting his coat and checking his emails on his laptop. He was on his way to Los Angeles for a crucial meeting with investors, and his mind was focused on the figures and the presentations, little suspecting that his day was about to change dramatically. The plane vibrated gently on the runway, the pilot's announcements echoed faintly in the cabin, and the passengers seemed absorbed by their screens and conversations. A few rows away, flight attendant Lisa Cartwright walked by to check seatbelts and remind passengers to put their devices in airplane mode. Her smile seemed strained, and her eyes flashed with frustration that she tried to hide behind her mask of politeness. When Lisa reached Marcus, her expression changed. For no apparent reason, she raised her hand and slapped him hard. The sound echoed throughout the cabin, and an icy silence fell. Marcus, shocked, placed a hand on his cheek, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The passengers nearby began to murmur, some pulling out their phones to film the scene. "What's going on?" asked a woman sitting next to him, her voice trembling. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Marcus, despite the pain and humiliation, remained calm. He didn't respond with anger, knowing that giving in to his impulse would only make things worse. Lisa, furious, stepped back, ready to offer an awkward excuse, but no words came out. She glared at Marcus with a glint of anger in her eyes, as if that simple gesture had suddenly unleashed something she couldn't control. As the plane took off, a video filmed by a passenger began circulating on social media. Likes and shares piled up at an alarming rate. Within hours, the incident had gone viral. Marcus, unwittingly, found himself at the center of a media storm. Television networks, journalists, and activists denounced the act as an unacceptable racist attack, and thousands of comments poured in, some expressing anger, others support. For Marcus, that moment marked the beginning of a turning point he had never imagined. What seemed like a simple slap would transform into a fight for justice, exposing the airline's flaws and revealing truths far darker than the gesture itself. But Marcus was not alone. Passengers who witnessed the incident would soon speak out, and each of their testimonies would change the story of this tragic day into a symbol of courage and resilience. No sooner had the plane reached cruising altitude than notifications exploded on Marcus's phone. He looked at his screen and realized that the video of the incident had already been shared by thousands of people. Outraged comments scrolled by at breakneck speed, Some expressed their anger at the flight attendant, others praised Marcus's composure. "It's incredible. I've never seen anything like it," murmured a passenger sitting near him, patting him on the shoulder. Marcus managed a slight smile, but his mind was elsewhere. He knew this moment would transcend his private life. The airline was quickly alerted. An emergency meeting was convened in Los Angeles to decide how to proceed. Lisa Cartwright was immediately suspended, but the media didn't stop there. Television networks began broadcasting the video, analyzing every gesture, every expression, every reaction of the passengers. Online newspapers published scathing articles on social media, calling the act racist and unacceptable. Marcus, for his part, was trying to remain calm. He knew that reacting impulsively would be misinterpreted. But the weight of the humiliation and the speed with which his private life was being turned into a public spectacle were beginning to take their toll on him. He didn't just want justice for himself, he wanted this slap to serve as a lesson, to spark a real debate about racism and responsibility. Among the passengers, some spoke up, offering their support. A young woman, Emily, approached Marcus shyly. "I saw you remain calm, you showed a lot of dignity." Marcus nodded, touched by this unexpected gesture of solidarity. Other witnesses shared their videos and stories, strengthening the movement that was beginning to form on social media. On the other side of town, civil rights organizations began calling for actions and rallies. The hashtags #Justice for Marcus and #Stop Racism in Aviation began to explode, and soon what had started as an isolated slap in the face would become a national symbol of dignity and the fight against injustice. Marcus took a deep breath. He knew he was about to enter a battle far bigger than he had imagined. That slap wasn't just an isolated act of violence, it had become the catalyst for a movement. And for Marcus, remaining silent was no longer an option. The next morning, Marcus woke up overwhelmed by the media attention. Notifications kept pouring in, and his phone vibrated incessantly. Every American media outlet wanted an exclusive interview, every network wanted his live testimony. Even his colleagues were stunned. Marcus, usually discreet and reserved, had unwittingly become a national symbol. Meanwhile, the airline had launched an internal investigation. Lisa Cartwright was suspended and questioned by management and security investigators. Video footage, passenger testimonies, and audio recordings now constituted overwhelming evidence. But this wasn't just a disciplinary matter, the scandal was taking on a legal and public dimension. Marcus, invited to the press conference organized by the company, felt the adrenaline surge. He knew his words could influence public opinion. When he stepped up to the microphone, his hands trembled slightly, but his voice was firm. "What happened yesterday on that plane is not just a slap in the face. It's a symbol of what many people experience every day. I chose to remain calm because I refuse to respond to hate with hate. But this calm does not mean that we should ignore injustice." The journalists were frantically taking notes. The video of his statement was immediately shared on social media, and thousands of messages of support poured in. Among them were numerous accounts from people who had experienced similar humiliations, reinforcing the social and political dimension of the incident. But the story took a dramatic turn when a direct confrontation was arranged between Marcus and Lisa. In a closed room, surrounded by company executives and journalists, Lisa tried to explain her actions. Her words were hesitant, her initial arrogance had vanished, replaced by palpable nervousness. I didn't mean to," she stammered, but Marcus calmly interrupted her. "You can't claim it was an accident. You slapped me for no reason. And that action has consequences for you, for me, and for many others." The silence that followed was heavy. Lisa looked away, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. The tension was palpable. This moment, filmed and shared by a few journalists present, would soon go viral, increasing the pressure on the airline and on Lisa herself. Marcus, despite the anger he felt, chose to remain dignified. He knew that his measured reaction sent a more powerful message than any revenge. In the face of injustice, calm and dignity are worth more than violence. The days following the slap were a whirlwind for Marcus. The media continued to hound him, but instead of succumbing to the stress, He used the attention to raise awareness. National interviews, morning shows, podcasts, and online articles fueled discussions about racism in aviation and abuses of power. Every word he spoke reinforced his status as a symbol of dignity and resilience. The airline, under immense pressure, announced it would launch a full investigation and was considering severe sanctions against Lisa Cartwright. Demonstrations and rallies in support of Marcus took place outside the company's offices in New York and Los Angeles. Signs bore messages such as, "Justice for Marcus," and "Zero Tolerance for Racism." But Marcus felt a dilemma. Public opinion wanted him to sue Lisa, demand enormous damages, and achieve a spectacular media victory. Yet he knew that humiliation and anger shouldn't define his actions. He was thinking about what could truly change things, and not just for himself. Then came the day when Marcus made his decision. At a press conference organized by the airline, he spoke with a calm firmness that captivated everyone. "I have decided not to sue Lisa Cartwright for this slap." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. The journalists froze, taken aback by the announcement. Marcus continued. "I believe that true justice does not lie in revenge. What I want is for this incident to serve as an educational and transformative force. I hope that the airline will implement mandatory training on diversity, tolerance, and conflict management. I want every employee to understand that human dignity must always come first." The media were stunned. The reactions on social media were instantaneous. Some praised his courage and wisdom, others were skeptical, wondering why he hadn't chosen the traditional path of legal justice. But Marcus knew that this decision would have a deeper and more lasting impact. Lisa, for her part, was deeply affected by this unexpected gesture. She understood that the slap was not just an isolated incident, but that it had triggered a reflection on her life and behavior. For the first time, she felt genuine remorse and understood that her actions had consequences far beyond herself. This moment, filled with tension and emotion, was a turning point. Marcus had chosen a path that surprised everyone, but which sent a clear message: dignity and social justice could prevail over hatred and revenge. A few weeks after the incident, Marcus's life had changed dramatically. He was no longer just a discreet businessman. He had become a national symbol of dignity and resilience in the face of racism. Social media continued to share his message, and organizations across the country were emulating his approach to promote tolerance and justice. The airline officially announced major reforms: mandatory diversity training, awareness programs for all employees, and the creation of an oversight committee on conflict management and passenger respect. Marcus had achieved his goal: to transform an act of violence and humiliation into a genuine lesson in social responsibility. Lisa Cartwright, for her part, had been fired. But the path to her redemption had only just begun. After attending counseling sessions and educational programs, she wrote a public letter to Marcus. In her trembling, heartfelt words, she expressed her regret and understanding for the harm she had caused. Marcus, true to his initial choice, responded with compassion. "The important thing is not to punish for revenge, but to change for the better. I hope you truly understand and never repeat this action." The reaction of the passengers who had witnessed the incident was also overwhelming. Many came to Marcus to thank him for showing the courage to remain calm, for choosing dignity over anger. Among them, Emily, the young woman who had been with him on the plane, told him through tears, "You have shown us what it truly means to remain human, even in the face of injustice." Marcus then understood that what had begun as a brutal slap in the face had become a catalyst for change. The incident had revealed the fractures in society, but it had also highlighted the power of integrity, courage, and compassion. Months later, Marcus received an invitation to testify before Congress during a session on combating racism and discrimination in transportation. His story had crossed borders and inspired concrete policies. He stood before the lawmakers, calm and dignified, knowing that his decision not to retaliate had had a far greater impact than any legal action. The plane that had been the scene of his humiliation was no longer just a place of tension, it had become the symbol of a universal lesson: in the face of injustice, dignity and resilience can transform a tragic situation into an example of courage and lasting change. Marcus smiled slightly, thinking back to the slap that had turned his life upside down. That absurd and cruel gesture had sparked a silent revolution, proving that sometimes, true power lies in calmness, patience, and the choice to remain human.